Fox News reporter Jacqui Heinrich questions the White House regarding Saudi Arabia's oil production as well as United States inflation. Whoopi Goldberg of The View makes an astonishing claim about murder rates in Republican states, which we are going to debunk here on the Bald Brad Show. And lastly, The View says Dr. Oz was bullying John Fetterman during the debate. All of that and more here on the Bald Brad Show. Welcome to the Bald Brad Show. It is Thursday, October 27th, and as always, I couldn't be happier than to kick these mornings off right, doing the Bald Brad Show and hanging out with all of you, my friends and true American patriots, where we come together as a community of conservatives and Republicans, go over the stories of the day, and bring all the news and information you need to know about. So if you want to join us here at the Bald Brad Show and you haven't done so, what are you doing? Hit that subscribe button. If you're over at Rumble, hit the plus and give us a comment down below. And if you're listening on any of the podcast airwaves, Apple, Google, Spotify, heck folks, you can find us and listen to us anywhere and everywhere. Leave us a lovely 5-star review. Not only would you be supporting a conservative, but most importantly, you'd be supporting any conservative thought and ideas out there to new viewers who haven't seen our content or our channel. Show up and support would be greatly appreciated. Hit that like button. The YouTube algorithm really does love it. And double check to make sure that bell notification icon clicked so that you're notified whenever we upload or go live, which is Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, with Supernatural Saturdays and a sprinkling of politics on Sunday. Be notified by hitting that bell icon. With that being said, we got clips galore for y'all today, folks. We're going to lead off here with our story of the day with Fox News reporter Jacqui Heinrich questioning John Kirby of the White House about a relationship with the Saudis, but also, do we have any intelligence that they're going to pull back more oil production coming up in the coming weeks here, as well as the fact that we are extremely low on diesel, and what the hell we're going to do about that, folks. As always, if you haven't hit that like and subscribe button, do it now. That being said, let's go roll into the tape.
John, the Saudis took a veiled shot at the administration for selling the country's emergency oil reserves and said that that decision may become a painful one in the next few months. Is there any indication that they plan to further cut production?
I'd have to refer you to them, Jackie. I don't have insight into what their future decisions will or won't be. We did propose that they not make a decision right now and wait until the next scheduled meeting, which was very early next month. So we'll see what they end up doing at this next meeting.
Do you feel that the administration...
I think that's really interesting because there's almost a contradiction, and John Kirby very well could be telling the truth here. I think he's actually pretty good at answering people's questions, so I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt and say that he actually doesn't have any intelligence on this. But what I find interesting is, at one end, you're saying, well, we had intelligence before, we have communication, a good relationship with the Saudis, in air quotes for those that are listening, and we knew that they were going to decrease the production of oil, which is why they told them to, hey, hold off on it till after the midterms, so that in a nutshell, we don't get shellacked by the American public because they're going to be pissed because this is going to affect them at the pump, of which they're trying to spread this narrative that you're getting more relief at the pump. Look what Joe Biden's doing, when in actuality he's not doing anything. And then you're going to come out and say, well, we don't really know what's going on. We don't know what their decision-making process is going to be. We do have conversations with them. So that's where I find it a little bit fuzzy here. Again, on one end, you had conversations, you knew what they were going to do. And on the other end, now you don't know what they're going to do coming their next meeting. So was there cut ties with the relationship? Are the Saudis not liking Joe Biden? Would that be more evidence to support what was the news article the other day, where the Saudis are literally making fun of Joe Biden behind his back and making fun of his mental stability? So I don't know. It doesn't look good. It makes you wonder if our diplomacy is kind of going down the hill, and as well as our foreign policy. But let's continue.
Has sufficient insight into what foreign governments are going to do, given the reporting that the U.S. thought that there was a deal to boost production through the end of the year, that the decision from the Saudis and OPEC Plus came as a surprise and caused a bit of a meltdown in the West Wing. And your answer just now saying that, don't have insight into what they might be doing. Is that at all a failure of our diplomacy or foreign policy?
No, I mean, there's a lot there. First of all, we didn't have a meltdown. Secondly, while we can't predict perfectly what OPEC Plus is going to decide to do, we're not part of that cartel. It's not like we don't have ongoing discussions with the Saudis and with other members of OPEC. We do. And we try to get the best information we can. Obviously, they have to make the decisions that they're going to make. So we'll see where they go on this next meeting. What I can speak to is President Biden's priorities, and that's making sure that we continue to keep the price going down and to reduce the pain at the pump for the American people, and to try to do what we can in a measured, deliberate way to help better balance supply and demand inside the global market. And it is a global market, and I think that sometimes gets forgotten.
It doesn't get forgotten, John. The thing is that the Biden administration is shooting themselves in the foot, and that we shouldn't have to be looking at it as a global market if we would just increase domestic oil production, stop pushing these campaign promises of wanting to rid fossil fuel, which Joe Biden did in fact do, and we did play that in our shorts as well as prior videos here in the Bald Brad Show. So if you would just stop shooting yourself in the foot, increase domestic oil production, remove that narrative of which scares oil companies on wanting to utilize some of those leases, make that investment in that oil drilling, whatever that's buying insurance, more permits, the hiring of staff, I mean, whatever it may be that goes into oil production. They don't want to do it because you're the administration and you literally said you want to remove them and just completely obliterate their business. So why would they want to increase domestic oil production here? Even if you did open the floodgates, what you have to do is in combination of your PR say, hey, you know what? We want to increase domestic oil production. We're going to get rid of a lot of the red tape. The environmental stuff's going to get removed as well. We want to have them almost have free reign so we can increase domestic oil production so we're not relying on Venezuela, these dictatorships of which Joe Biden wants to go to. We're not relying on these Middle Eastern countries for oil where we can be self-sufficient. You're shooting yourself in the foot, and you don't need to because America has the energy to be ultimately producing it itself and being self-sufficient.
What are we doing to increase the supply of diesel, given that the Energy Information Administration said as of October 14th, the U.S. only had about a 25-day supply? You have the Northeast and New York already rationing home heating oil. What are we doing to prepare for the winter and to ramp up supply of diesel?
I'll take the question on the diesel because I just don't have the data on that in front of me. So let me take that and we'll get back to you on that. But writ large, the president has been working very, very hard to make sure that we're that not only are we ready for fluctuations that could come, and of course the prices are going down, and we think that's important, but that we are also doing what we can to help our European friends and partners who are also going to be facing a long, cold winter. We have doubled our commitment. The commitment he made in March for natural gas exports to Europe, we've doubled that commitment in terms of actual, getting things over there, getting natural gas over there. And we are working with foreign suppliers of natural gas and oil to see if we can't help our European partners diversify their own storage and supplies. Many of them are, in fact, building up their storage capability here for the winter. Some are farther along than others, and we're working closely with them bilaterally and multilaterally to see what we can do to help that. But I will owe you a question on the diesel.
I'm actually really surprised that John Kirby doesn't have an answer there regarding the 25 days left of diesel in the supply, because this could actually hurt a lot of us and increase inflation even more because of the supply chain issues that are taking place. And with a lot of the freight having issues with obtaining diesel here, or potentially obtaining diesel, we could run into a massive problem here. And I also find it rich that he's talking about the Europeans. If you all recall, they were all laughing at Donald Trump when Donald Trump couldn't believe the deal they want to make with Russia and other countries for natural gas and for energy. And so now they're about to have a dark winter here. They're all screwed because of the decision making they've made in the past. And they were all laughing. I don't think they're laughing now because it's going to be really, really cold based on the decision process that they have made. And this is kind of a theme that we see with those that tend to lean left, is that there are these environmentalists, rather than focusing on slowly over time transitioning, and I mean a long time transitioning away from fossil fuels. You have to do it right. You can't just rush this type of stuff. This is what happens when you make bad decisions and you rush a lot of things. You get caught with your tail between your legs, and now you got to deal with it. Furthermore, we still have Jacqui Heinrich here. Once John Kirby was off the podium answering questions, you got Jean-Pierre here being asked about inflation in terms of, well, are we going to have a date on when this ends? Let's continue.
Thanks, Greg. You had just said that there are no plans to adjust the economic team after the midterms. So I just want to ask in a follow-up, the administration then say when Americans can expect to feel relief from inflation? Is there a date they can look to?
So I will let the experts speak to that. I'm not going to get into when that's going to occur, right? But we have seen some relief over the past several months. We understand there's more work to be done. But look, the president has been laser focused on doing the work every day to lower costs for the American families because he understands what inflation is doing to American workers, American families, and so he's going to continue that work. I just talked about gas prices. That has gone down about $1.25 a gallon.
Again, and you saw John Kirby do this. They're emphasizing and treating as gas prices going down is attributed to what Biden has been doing. But when gas prices go up, it's not Biden's doing. It's not Biden's fault. It's Putin's fault. It's somebody else's fault. It's the Republicans' fault. Hell, it's whoever they throw the dart at the board and it lands on is going to be, it's their fault. So taking credit on a positive here of gas prices going down, but when it's a negative, you just want to throw the problems at everybody else rather than taking responsibility for the problems of which you most likely created due to your policy. Let's continue.
For the past several days, it's going to continue to go down. That is saving American families about $130 per month. That matters. Last week, we talked about hearing aids. That's going to how we're lowering cost. Hearing aids cost about $3,000 a pair. What the president did last week is going to help, tens of millions of Americans. And that matters. The junk fees, going to give Americans a little bit more breathing room. So look, we understand that there's more work to do. We understand that families are being squeezed by what's happening currently with inflation. But again, we have seen some moderation. I believe we'll continue to see that. Don't want to get too much into the economist world, but because of the president's economic policies, we have made sure, the president has made sure that we don't leave anybody behind, that we have a strong labor market, that unemployment is at the lowest that it's been in 50 years, and that matters. And we should talk about that as well as acknowledging what American families are going through. I'm just going to, okay.
It's, folks, not a terrible job actually from Karine Jean-Pierre today. At least she gave a little bit of some emphasis in terms of what she was talking about rather than really just ultimately fully dodging questions. She gave some answers there, which you got to respect, folks. But it is interesting how Joe Biden's taking credit for certain things that he has nothing to do with. And if he does have something to do with it, again, when it's negatives, he doesn't want to take responsibility for it. It's everybody else's fault. He's supposedly doing everything he can and has been doing everything he can every single day because he's laser focused, as you just heard. But yet CPI's gone up. We're still at 8.2% inflation. Mortgage interest rates are hitting about 7% now. So everything is going up in price, which is always quite interesting because he wants to give relief to those that hold student debt by implementing the student loan debt forgiveness program so that when those people are out of debt and they go get a mortgage, of which comes from Karine Jean-Pierre in terms of, hey, since you removed this debt, now you can spend this money on a down payment on a house. Well, now when you go do that down payment and you have to take out a mortgage, the interest rate just went through the roof because of the inflation of which Joe Biden caused. So it's just a vicious cycle here. None of it makes sense. We've been dealing with this transition for literally 2 years now, which is why she can't give a date because we're still in a transition in their mind. We're still transitioning into what? Who the hell knows? What we've been seeing here on the Bald Brad Show is transitioning into a deeper recession because the Joe Biden administration just thinks that we're not in a recession at all. And how did they do that one? Well, they changed the terms of the rule of thumb of what a recession was, where you had 2 consecutive quarters of negative GDP growth. I understand, folks. I understand there's more involved into that, but it doesn't change the fact that there's a rule of thumb that we've stuck with for decades now, and that still fits into what Joe Biden has done. So we are in a tiny recession here. Could potentially get worse depending on how oil goes with the Saudis, how energy goes with Europe, how diesel prices go here in the next month or so. There could be a lot of changing around and maneuvers, and we'll see who Joe Biden blames next when it dips down into something bad. Moving into our second story of the day, folks, if you haven't hit that like and subscribe button already, join us. We would love your help here and support at The Bald Brad Show. Well, there's a Republican host that recoils when Sonny Hostin blows off Lee Zeldin assassination attempt. This one is truly remarkable. And you have a massive claim that is made by Whoopi Goldberg, which we are going to debunk here on the Bald Brad Show. And I feel like we don't do that enough, where we do a lot of reaction, kind of shooting from the hip commentary. And very rarely do I sit down and go, okay, let's look at one of the left's arguments here. Let's see what they're saying. and then let's debunk what they're saying and actually prove them wrong. That's what we're going to do today. So you have this clip here from Whoopi Goldberg, and then we'll get into what Sunny Hostin says of talking about Republican-led states and how the murder crimes have gone up and how we're so focused as Republicans and conservatives on the crime in Democrat-ran areas. But what about the murder rates? Let's go ahead and roll it.
One of the things people tend to forget, particularly sometimes when the Republicans like this gentleman are running, they tend to forget. Conservative media reports on crime, they focus on the urban areas, but as it turns out, murder rates have been higher this year in Republican-led states. And Third Way found that 8 of the 10 states with the highest per capita murder rates in 2020 voted Republican in every presidential election. Now, crime is rough everywhere. It's happening everywhere. And what I wanted from Lee Zeldin, I wanted a plan. Because I know what Kathy Hochul's been trying to do. I know how she's working. Sometimes, sometimes she can get it together and sometimes it doesn't go the way I want it to. But I wanted to hear him say something other than, you're not, you. What is your plan, Lee Zeldin? Because we know people are getting stabbed. We know what's happening. We know what's going on. What do you plan to do? Because as I'm saying, she at least has a plan.
Well, we certainly didn't hear a plan, I don't think.
Well, I'd be happy to tell you the Republican
what's interesting
plan.
to me
No, his plan. Just his.
So she's about to bring up the Republicans' plan, but now she wants to hear his plan, and his plan could very well be attributed to the Republicans' plan. But she doesn't want to get into that, and like I said, we're going to debunk this right now because the way that she phrased this is very misleading. And the thing is with the View listeners, they're not going to sit there and actually look into the study like we did on the Bald Brad show and actually look at the numbers here and what she's saying. Because there is truth into what she said, but if you dive deeper, that truth isn't what it makes it out to be in terms of the Republican states here, or the red states. So with Republicans hammering them over rising murder rates, Democrats have come up with a new line of defense. Republicans, they claim, are the ones really responsible for the surge in homicides. The United States, California Governor Gavin Newsom, my governor unfortunately, recently declared has a red state murder problem. Well, it doesn't, folks. The bogus claim comes from a March study by Democratic think tank Third Way, which you heard Whoopi Goldberg talk about, which purports to show that contrary to the right-wing obsession, which we've covered here on the Bald Brad show, over homicides in Democratic cities, murder rates are far higher in Trump voting red states than Biden voting blue states. There is truth to that in terms of the red state, but when you zoom in on it, folks, we're about to debunk it. According to Third Way, of the top 10 states with the highest per capita murder rates in 2020, 8 of those states voted for Donald Trump, while just 2, New Mexico and Georgia, voted for Joe Biden. Republicans seem to do a much better job of talking about stopping crime than stopping the actual crime. That comes from Jim Kessler, an author of the report, told Axios. One problem that in most red states have, the higher murder rates are driven by the lethal violence in their blue cities. So you can have the state be red, but if you zoom in, it's the Democratic-ran cities and localities that are causing these massive murder rates. So she's lying to you. She's making it seem like, oh, well, it's the Republicans that are causing all this. But when you zoom in, it's you numbskulls, Democrats, and progressive left that are driving up the murder rates. So no matter which way you look at it, conservatives and the Republicans are still right. Just as we've been talking about on the Bald Brad show. It's your cities. Those cities can be embedded within a red state. It doesn't mean it's our fault. Run the localities like you're supposed to do. Run your cities like you're supposed to do. Not drive them in the ground like you see from Los Angeles, Chicago with Mayor Lightfoot, or Mayor Eric Adams of New York City. Hell, the list goes on and on. But this is what they do. They manipulate data, folks. This is exactly what they do. Take Missouri. Yes, it voted for Trump, but it also is home to 2 of the most dangerous cities, St. Louis and Kansas City, both of which are run by what? Oh, it's Democrats, ran by Democrats. Earlier this year, CBS News did an analysis of the deadliest U.S. cities. Using the latest FBI and crime data, in 2019, it found St. Louis had the highest murder rate in the nation, with 64.54 murders per 100,000 residents. Kansas City, meanwhile, had the 8th highest murder rate, with basically 30 murders per 100,000. According to the FBI, the state had about 520 murders in major metropolitan areas that year, 20 in cities outside metropolitan areas, and 28 in non-metropolitan counties. So the vast majority of Missouri's homicides took place in Democrat-run cities. Unbelievable. This same holds true for Louisiana, Tennessee, specifically in Democrat-ran areas like Memphis, Alabama. I mean, you go down the list here, you guys. It literally just shellacks in this study that's done in correlation with the FBI that it's Democrat-ran cities that are driving everything into the ground. Murder rates are up, armed robberies are up, and the whole shebang. And who are they going to blame? Us. Go figure. Go figure how they get to that one. They're going to blame us over all this. You can't make it up. You cannot make it up, folks. And it doesn't stop there. You got Sonny Hostin here just making just a crazy asinine comment about an assassination attempt on Lee Zeldin. And we'll talk about it. Let's just go ahead and roll it.
And I don't think.
Well, I'd be happy to tell you the
Well, what's
Republican
interesting to
plan.
me
his plan, just him.
He voted against the ban on semi-automatic weapons.
Of course he did.
And homicides are up. And I think most people, having been a prosecutor, I know this, they care about violent crimes. They don't care about broken window crime.
It's amazing how she's going to talk about semi-automatic weapons and removing them, which is what The View wants. They want to get rid of handguns and the AR-15 style rifles and all this other stuff. But yet you have these murder rates that are increasing in Democrat-ran areas. They're going to blame it on the red states. Go figure. And at the same time, they don't want people to be able to protect themselves, but yet they're also going to say that that's what Americans are worried about is violent crime. How the hell are you supposed to protect yourself, lady, if you remove our weapons? If you take them away, which is what you want to do?
They really don't care about that as much. They care about violent crimes.
In the last few months, Lee Zeldin was nearly stabbed on stage while campaigning in New York. A bullet came within 30.
True.
Yeah.
That's not okay, though. That's
No, I'm not saying it's
horrifying.
okay.
That means
He is-
crime and
he is
political violence is on that.
Right.
And then there was a shooting outside his house that came within 30 feet of his home while his daughters were in the house. He is very familiar with the crime that is going on.
He's familiar with
and
what just happened to him, because that's New York's. That's New York
the New York
City
City.
right
But
now.
one thing that's
That's what we have to.
But one
that's
thing,
what we're
safest city
crime
in
that's
the
the
country.
thing.
And I don't think.
Well,
and
I'd be
New York remains one of the safest. Come on. Does anybody actually believe that? Just go to New York and actually see it. By the way, New York is a Democratic ran once again. And you don't have to be there that long to see the crime that's going on in New York. You just had Whoopi Goldberg call out the crime that's going on in New York. You got Sonny Hostin discrediting the fact of the crime that's going on in New York. But this is the thing, folks. It's all smoke. It's all craziness. And this is what they do on The View. They lie to all of you. They lie consistently to all of you. We're going to end this segment off by saying, and in May, a report his Manhattan Institute colleagues, Robert Verbergen and Christos Markidis, examined the growth in the homicide rate per capita in the largest U.S. counties from 2019 and 2020, and then compared the rates in GOP-leaning and Democratic-ran-leaning counties. They found that the counties with higher shares of GOP voters have a much lower homicide death rate and a lower number of deaths in 2020, and also a lower growth in homicide rates. So you got to love that they're going to use a Democratic think tank called Third Way to try and support the information that they're espousing these narratives to their viewers, of which when you zoom in onto it, it turns out it's not what it's made out to be. Go figure. The View swindling their own audience. And that's not just it. We also have The View here talking about Dr. Oz supposedly bullying John Fetterman on the election debate. They're doing this whole abled body thing. They're going after him. They're bullying him. They shouldn't be doing that. They shouldn't be treating him like that. Folks, this is one you're definitely not going to want to miss. If you haven't already, hit that like and subscribe button. That being said, let's go ahead and roll it.
Last night, John Fetterman and Dr. Oz took the stage in the race for the Pennsylvania seat that could tip the balance of power in the Senate. And Fetterman started by acknowledging his medical issues. Take a look.
I had a stroke. He's never let me forget that. And I might miss some words during this debate, mush two words together, but it knocked me down, but I'm going to keep coming back up.
As a physician, I've been in the room when there's some difficult conversations happening. I don't want the federal government involved with that at all. I want women, doctors, local political leaders, letting the democracy that's always allowed our nation to thrive to put the best ideas forward so states can decide for themselves.
You said, quote, I don't support fracking at all. So how do you square the two?
I do support fracking, and I support fracking, and I stand and I do support fracking.
Donald Trump has supported you. He has endorsed you. Why won't you fully commit to supporting him in 2024?
Oh, I do. I would support Donald Trump if he decided to run for president.
Oh my gosh. Oh. It's all theatrics, folks. We're going to continue in just one moment here. I just thought it was interesting how John Fetterman was like, I might jumble up some words. Really, John? You folks let me know if this sounds like you're going to be jumbling up your words a little bit. Let's roll it.
As lieutenant governor, you're running for a seat that could decide the balance of power in Washington. What qualifies you to be a U.S. senator? You have 60 seconds.
Hi, good night, everybody. I'm running to serve Pennsylvania. He's running to use Pennsylvania.
What? But he's just there to jumble up a couple words, folks, according to his own words. But yet, hi, good night, everybody. We're kicking the show off, man. What are you talking about? And I'm not trying to hound the guy. He clearly went through a very serious medical issue, meaning a stroke, and then we all hope he recovers from. Nobody's hoping that it stays that way, that this guy stays, cognitively messed up or whatever he's going through, because he won't release his medical records. Everybody wants him to do better, at least from what I've heard of in terms of conservatives, Republicans talking about him. But to make it seem like, I'm just going to mix up a couple words. No, man. You're mixing up more than a couple words. Here's another one. Him slurring. You can kind of make out what he's saying, but this is more than just a couple words.
And how can a man, with 10 gigantic mansions, has unwilling to talk about a willing wage for anybody? Imagine a single mom trying with 2 children, trying to raise with them, realizing making $31,000 a year, $15 an hour. And
okay. So that went on all night, completely getting shellacked. And so when you call him out on the fact that he had a stroke, that he's not doing okay, all of a sudden you're bullying him, even though you're calling it out. For example, if somebody was obese and you want them to get healthy because you're worried about the condition that they're in because they are obese, all of a sudden you're fat shaming somebody. When you're not trying to make a rude comment towards them, it's going to come across that way regardless of however you phrase it. But it's purely subjective. But this is what they're talking about. All of the leftists and progressives. Dr. Oz he's able body shaming him and all these other things. We're calling out the fact that the guy had a stroke. And if he's talking about policy and he's going to be implementing policy, you'd want to make sure that he actually knows what he's talking about. Now, it very well could be the fact that it's not kind of projecting in the way that's going on in his mind, meaning that when he says words, it's coming out wrong, but in his mind, it actually is there and it makes sense, meaning he can probably write down stuff and have it make sense, but when he speaks it with his mouth because of the stroke, it's just coming off wrong or weird. So he very well could potentially make good policy. I'm going to put air quotes, good policy, because he's a Democrat. We all know how that goes in Democrat Rand City, speaking of our second segment. But he very well could be all there, but he's not willing to release his medical record, so we don't know. And we're just expected to vote for the guy? Even though he's a Democrat, I would never vote for him, but you get what I'm saying.
So how did it look to you all?
Well, that part where he says this should be a decision between a woman, her medical professional, and then local political officials is where he lost me, because I thought he was going in the right direction. And I think as a doctor, he knows how intimate and important those decisions are. So I find that answer particularly and that stance a bit intellectually dishonest. But it was the way he delivered that got me. Like, he should know that's not going to end well when you start like that.
The Republican Party is running a bunch of ads about showing Fetterman stumbling on things because of the stroke. What kind of a doctor is behind that? Aren't you supposed to do no harm? It's so unempathetic to the guy, And I just want to say that Oz is very slick. He's a...
Really? We're going to go with empathy from the Democrats as well as the Republicans, however side you want to look at it. Did you all remember the Supreme Court hearing on how they treated Brett Kavanaugh? She's going to sit here and have the cojones to tell us, well, what about the empathy? They're just running ads just showing his stroke. Yeah, why would you not capitalize on that? That's a dangerous thing. But they don't look at this. There's a common theme here, folks, with Democrats putting people, running people, whatever you want to term it as, trying to put people in office that aren't all up here. You can look at a main figure of the United States right now. What's his name? Joe Biden. Can't find his Oval Office. Fights with his teleprompter. Slurs his words. Needs a note card. Tell him where to sit and who to talk to. Pre-vetted questions. Falls asleep in interviews. Loses train of thought. Falls up a flight of stairs. Hits a golf ball backwards. I mean, time and time again. You could talk about it. We've done a whole thing with Nancy Pelosi. Not even know where the hell she's at on an interview. So now you got this guy being called out because unfortunately he has a medical condition which nobody's happy about. But now that we're talking about it because it should be an issue, now you're upset with it. These are the same people, by the way, that because Trump was walking down a ramp slowly because he had leather bottom shoes and he didn't want to slip, all of a sudden it was a medical condition. Or he drank a sip of water, weird. It's a medical condition. It had hit national airwaves and everybody had to talk about it for 2 weeks. But yet you never hear them talking about Joe Biden and his mental condition that's going on. Joy Behar herself was all excited because Joe Biden was like, he was on the show. And yeah, no, he works out every day. Really? Joe Biden works out every day? I don't know.
TV guy. Yeah. Remember that. There's another woman in Arizona, Carrie Lake, also a TV woman. So they're very slick, you know, and Fetterman's kind of like, you know, with the stroke and without the stroke, he's not as slick. But he has ideas and he has governed. Yeah. You know, Oz, and I know Oz. I mean, I've been to his house, and he has a part of him. You know, I called him one time to help with the recommendation for a doctor. He was right there for me. He's like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde at this point. I don't know which one is the real Dr. Oz. But voting for the slick person on TV is like voting for me. Don't vote for me for politics. I know how to work on television. That doesn't mean that's the same thing. We had Donald Trump.
Trust me, Joy. Nobody would vote for you, okay? Actually, I'm sure some of them, most of the View audience would probably vote for you because they don't have a damn clue what's going on, but no. Nobody would vote for you. For the love of God, you're worse than Joe Biden almost. That's saying something.
Yeah. Now we have Oz, and now we have this Carrie Lake. Don't be fooled by that.
It's really strange. It was really strange to me that he chose to bully a stroke victim.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Like, he obviously was bullying him. And, you know, I don't think the people of Pennsylvania or the people in general liked that, because Fetterman raised $1 million after that debate. And I think it takes real courage.
And that just shows you where the Democrat Party's at. Again, we just emphasize this. They're willing to give their money. They're willing to vote people in that are clearly struggling with some sort of mental issue. And again, I'm fully happy to say that I was wrong. If he releases his medical records and he can recoup and actually get better, and it's all there, that everything cognitively is working, it's just coming out weird. But it just shows that Democrats are willing to vote just some loony binny stuff here, regardless of whoever it is. I mean, you got Joe Biden literally is chauffeured out on a gurney. It might be chauffeured out on a gurney literally in 2024, and they'll still vote for the guy. Even though everything that we've seen shows some massive problems up here, they'll still vote for him. But yeah, no, Bo said he got $1 million in three hours.
To show that you've been knocked down. I think it takes real bravery to allow people to see your weakness, right? And we know that Fetterman's cognitive abilities have not been compromised. It's about...
By the way, in political office, it is not brave for people to see your weakness. I know this is a push from the progressive left. I'm brave. Oh, look at me. I'm boasting. Oh, that's not brave when you're holding political office. That can be very dangerous. Look at Joe Biden. His weakness is up here. And just his whole stature and demeanor of how he walks, how he talks, how he breathes, all that stuff. It's dangerous because you have other enemies around the world, China, Iran, the Taliban, I mean, the litany of other things, looking at, oh, this guy's weak. Why don't I go invade Ukraine? That guy's weak. He's practically dead. Why don't I go invade Taiwan? So it has massive implications. That whole statement of, oh, well, it's brave what he's doing. Come on.
Expression that has been compromised. Aphasia, exactly. And, you know, this is a smart guy. He got a degree in public policy from Harvard, his master's degree. So this is not a stupid guy. No. This is a guy, as you mentioned, was governor of Pennsylvania, was mayor for many, lieutenant governor, was the mayor for many years, and as well, you know, has just led his life in public service. So why would you vote for the whack doctor?
The quack.
The quack.
He's not really a quack.
And not vote. No. Well, I mean, I was on his show many times, but he, you know, he really rode the line.
He did, for money and power.
Yeah, he really did.
I watched the debate in full, and I had a different takeaway. So I've said this before on the show. I think some of our most consequential and important leaders in history have had disabilities. So as a society, that should not preclude somebody from holding elected office. What I had an issue with Fetterman is he did not seem to have a grasp on his policy positions. And what was hard for me was to differentiate, is that because of the stroke, or does he not have an explanation for doing a 180 on fracking, an issue that is extremely important in Pennsylvania, the second biggest energy producing state in the country? Joe Biden, who we all tease for having gaffes and not always saying things eloquently, I may disagree with his policies, but I've never doubted that he truly knows what he's talking about and he knows what his positions are. I didn't just personally walk away from that and think this guy is confident in his positions and ready to lead the state.
Well, that might be because
How are you going to say that about John Fetterman and then make a totally different distinction by Joe Biden, who I'm willing to say is way worse than John Fetterman? Way worse. I mean, how many clips do you need, lady? By the way, she's supposedly a Republican, but yet doesn't always seem like and says some weird things. You're going to say Joe Biden knows what's going on? How would anybody take you seriously? Come on. Oh, my God.
His position on fracking has twinkled a bit, you know, which happens in that state.
It hasn't twinkled a bit. You literally did a 180. You said that you were against fracking from the beginning, and now that you're running for office, all of a sudden, I'm totally for it. I've always been for it. We have video clips of this stuff. We're not idiots. We can literally see you time and time again saying you're against fracking. You've always been against fracking. It's your own damn words, and now all of a sudden that you're running and you realize you're going to get shellacked if you say that you're against fracking on TV, and everybody's going to see it in predominantly a massive energy-ran state. Now you're going to just do an old switcheroo. How convenient. Typical Democrat Party, folks.
And when you live in that state, you know that that's something you're going to have to come to terms with because it's not going anywhere, you know? So the hard thing for me is to sort of listen to Dr. Oz, who I had a lot of respect for, you know, and if I had a heart problem, I might call him, but then again, maybe not. But, you know, Fetterman is very clear. He's about codifying Roe v. Wade. He supports raising the minimum wage, and he's supporting fracking, which, you know, doesn't really make everybody happy, but there are some things that he is very clear on. And you know, it is Pennsylvania, and I know that Dr. Oz doesn't know jack about Pennsylvania.
He's a carpetbagger. He's not even from there.
He lives in Jersey.
One thing I did think was a little...
All right, so they're going to go on with this whole stuff. We don't need to sit there and be berated by this, folks. I'm sorry to torture you with the View stuff here. Of course, I'm being facetious. It's not really torture, but it is hard to listen to because it's a lot of asinine statements coming out, and they don't even know what the hell to say. But I love how at one point they loved Dr. Oz, and now that they don't because he's running for office. They loved Donald Trump at the beginning. Now all of a sudden they don't. This is how it works with the Democrats. Anytime somebody goes against their narrative and disagrees with them, now they're racist, sexist, biggest homophobe. Oh, they're icky. Oh, they're carpetbagger. Hey, he's not even from Pennsylvania. You don't have to be from somewhere to know what the hell's going on. And I love this art. It's a consistent argument from the Democrat Party and the progressive left in conjunction with one another. They always say, well, you have to be in somebody else's shoes to really fully understand what's going on. No, you don't. No, you don't. You could say that about literally any issue. You don't have to necessarily go through what somebody else is literally going through to be able to cognitively understand the whole dynamics of what they're going through. You don't have to, I mean, you could pick almost any issue. You don't have to go through it, again, to understand what it is. You don't have to live in that state to understand what they're going through, to change certain policies. It's such an asinine argument. I never understood it, but they're going to continue to push it. Folks, thank you so much for joining me here on The Bald Brad Show. Leave me a comment down below. Make sure you hit that like and subscribe button, and I'll see you tomorrow here on The Bald Brad Show.